Season's greetings, I'm Gabby. Welcome to the Happier Life Project, brought to you by free mental health and wellness app My Possible Self, in partnership with the Priory Healthcare. It's normal to feel stressed or lower than usual around Christmas time, especially if it's a time of year that brings back difficult memories or heightens or worsens any ongoing problems you may be going through. James Raddack, Vice President of Public Affairs for the National Mental Health Association, says the holidays are supposed to be a time full of joy and cheer, parties and family gatherings. But many factors help make the holidays so stressful. Fatigue, unrealistic expectations, commercialisation, financial constraints, and the ability to be with one's friends and family. Dreading Christmas and the build-up can really amplify our anxiety and stress levels, and it affects all of us, I think, to different degrees. And don't get me started on the whole New Year, New You debacle. Well, I think Christmas can be a bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. Or maybe for others it's just a bit meh. Let's get some expert advice from a leading anxiety expert, Joshua Fletcher, on how to navigate our levels of stress and anxiety around the festive period. So ready to find a healthier, happier, and maybe even jollier you? Let's get started. Welcome to the Happier Life Project, best-selling anxiety author, psychotherapist, and social media influencer, Joshua Fletcher.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
9 pages of notes, Josh, on Christmas anxiety. When I started to go down the rabbit hole,
oh God.
Your world is all things anxiety. It's what you write about. It's what you see patients about. It's what you've got a podcast about. And this all stemmed from you suffering greatly at the hands of. And I guess it's become your life's work to help others. Today, we are zooming in on holiday anxiety. So basically, this is the period from Thanksgiving, which is towards the end of November, to early January. The festive period, basically, if you will. Do you go all out? Are you one of those people?
For Christmas, personally, I try each year to engage with it a bit more in terms of my enthusiasm and energy for it. For me, Christmas used to be quite a tricky time, and still is, because I suffer from grief, and often with big events like this, and when people are grieving, Christmas is often seen, as a time where, like a milestone to reflect and look back, and actually, there's people here that aren't here, that I wish to be here. But at the same time, I've endeavoring to actually engage with it a bit more this year and say, well, let's focus on who is here, I enjoyed it last year, and I'm doing a bit better each time, and it's helped with my journey with grief, I think, rather than like feeling sorry for myself, but still a bit of that being.
It's hard. It's my first Christmas without my stepdad. Do you have a vivid Christmas memory, good or bad, that you would like to share?
Christmas memory? I've got loads of brilliant Christmas memories, I think. I think that's what makes it hard, because you look back and actually I was very lucky to have excellent Christmas memories with my family. When I was growing up as a child in particular, I had 2 Christmases. The benefits of having parents are divorced. You get 2 Christmases and they get to fight over who loves you the most. And if you're a clever young infant sociopath like me, you can play them off one another and get better presents. But in general, no, just really good memories of just being around family, and even the little arguments and stuff like that I quite liked. I was fortunate enough to have lots of nice Christmas memories. Not everyone does, and for some people, Christmas is a time that just it's just another Tuesday, and that's fair enough. But I was fortunate to have lots of nice memories from it. So probably just being around with family, playing board games and stuffing my face with chocolate and things like that. Yeah.
And it is supposed to be a joyous time of year full of celebrations with friends and family. But for many people, they do struggle. And this holiday anxiety and stress, it's well documented that this holiday period, increases in mental health presentations such as stress, anxiety, and depression. So why do you think so many people struggle during this time of year? I know grief is one of them that you've mentioned, but what else do you think?
Well, like you mentioned before, it's a holiday, and lots of people, when they go on holiday, they're out of their usual routine, and it kind of pressures them into reflecting, looking back, analyzing the year, often negatively comparing themselves to where they want to be, to their ideal self. There's other things like grief there as well. Maybe it's spending time with family that you just don't like. That's okay. No families are perfect, and some people are just not nice. Then you've got very real pressing issues, financial worries. Lots of people feel guilty for not having the financial stability to provide gifts and things, or even host a Christmas dinner. Because that's expensive, time consuming, and even like warming your house over here is expensive.
Oh yeah.
There's lots of pressures around it. Yeah, it depends on your relationship. Whether some people dread it, a lot of people dread it because maybe they've got social anxiety, maybe they don't like being in intense rooms, maybe they just don't like having that comparison. That it can be quite stressful as well if you've got people with family members with strong views, strong opinions, political ideologies, religious ideologies that differ from yours. There's so many variables that can make Christmas a nightmare.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my family now, like it's just like, oh God, but overall, it's one of those. It's it's okay. It's very normal if you're dreading it. Honestly, you don't have to have an anxiety disorder to dread Christmas.
Right, holiday dread is a real thing. And there's something about Christmas, I think, as well, that just amplifies and magnifies everything. So if you love Christmas, if you are one of those, then it can be the most wonderful time of the year. But if you don't like Christmas, or you do have anxiety, then like you said, it can just be hell, really. Christmas hell.
Yeah. I've often found that it's when people put pressure on themselves. If you're someone who struggles with an internal critic, and you constantly compare yourself to others or an ideal version of yourself, you'll find Christmas is often conflicts with perfectionist tendencies. So you're trying to be perfect at Christmas time. Just don't. You don't need to do that. Pour yourself half a whiskey, watch Muppets Christmas Carol, and get on with it. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be like the perfect dad from Christmas Channel 24. You don't need to do that. You're okay. You don't like it, just get through it. If you don't, and also not forgetting, it's the time of the year. If it's Christmas, or if you celebrate Hanukkah, or if you celebrate or just. It's the holiday, and it's usually a holiday where lots of people get together because of the nature of the holiday system, particularly in the Western world. And you're not weird or strange, or you don't have to beat yourself up if you don't like it. It's absolutely fine.
You've touched on quite a lot of points that I want to revisit a bit later on, but I found some quite interesting stats that I want to share with you. This one in particular, actually, a recent study conducted by Deichmann found that half of UK adults claim Christmas is the most stressful and anxiety-inducing time of year. So much so that 16% said they would rather do their tax return than attend a family Christmas. And 26% said it's more draining than a job interview. That's how much people hate it.
Yeah, and particularly it's a long list of obligations as well, isn't it? Like you got, and depending on the dynamic of your family, the structures of your family, could be quite complex. We'll go and see Auntie Jane on Friday, and then we'll go to your parents on Saturday, and then we'll go and do this and go and do that. It can be quite socially and physically exhausting.
And you've got that build up before. It becomes exhausting before you actually start because it becomes overwhelming just being given the schedule. Because I think a lot of people, like, because I go home for Christmas, so I just get told what I'm doing. There's not really any conversation about do you want to. It's like, we're doing this on this day, this and this day, going to this person this day. It can be a bit much.
Who's saying that, Gabby? You'd be like, well, I wasn't consulted on this. You
My
know,
mum.
yeah, yeah. Listen, mum, that's what you're
Yeah.
doing. You know, and I'll join you if I feel like it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's one of those. It's like, yeah, you gotta have your boundaries. Be careful with your boundaries, and you're allowed to say no and stuff. Like, I love my family to bits, but they can be quite intense. And once I've seen a few of them, I need a day to myself to recharge. Otherwise, I will murder them. No, I won't. But like, it's really important to have that. Otherwise, I'm not going to be my best self. I'm going to start resenting it. And I found that with boundaries, saying no, time boundaries, I will see you there, but I'm not going to go with you. I'm just going to have some time, go for a nice walk. I like to go for a nice walk on my own and just clear my head. You can recharge that battery a bit. And suddenly it doesn't all seem tiresome. It doesn't all seem like grueling,
Yeah.
arduous. No,
Yeah.
it's just having those little mini boundaries and that actually makes Christmas time a lot less stressful. But if you're going into Christmas with a lot of stress, with stress of in your personal life, put stress with family, stress with career, and then you go into that with no boundaries and no recharge time, that's then you're the kind of person that was susceptible to anxiety attacks and panic attacks and anger outbursts and many things.
Do you know, when I was looking at the different areas people struggle in, and a lot of them not surprising, and you've mentioned some already, the pressure of being happy and joyous all the time, fear of judgment, overspending. I thought this was interesting, but it makes sense. Fear of weight gain. Because I come from a family of feeders. I don't know about you, Josh. So there's that, oh, go on, have another one, have another. No, it's like your Christmas dinner is. We actually tend to have like 2 or 3 Christmas dinners in one day.
Yeah, well, that's fine. And, I don't, fear of weight gain. Why would you, as an anxiety therapist, I would be like, why do you fear weight gain? Okay, if I was up to me and I was to choose weight gain, I'd be like, no, but if you fear weight gain, then you have an unhealthy relationship with food.
Do you
And the
think?
people, yeah, if you fear weight gain, there's a difference between disliking weight gain and fearing weight gain.
Right.
Why would you fear it? What are the consequences of putting on a kilogram over Christmas because you've been having a nice time? I don't
Well,
understand that.
to play devil's advocate, if maybe you've been doing well on the lead up to the Christmas period and you're feeling quite good about yourself, and part of that is you've maybe been taking care of your diet and exercise, and then suddenly you've got all this indulgence, alcohol, food, eating more food because you're hungover as well, and then all the extra treats that you get around Christmas, then it's that kind of fear of, oh, I'm not going to feel so comfortable in my body because I'm not going to be able to, to
Yeah,
resist.
but I would, and as someone who works with eating disorders and a lot of those things like that, it's your relationship with food is healthy when it's balanced. If you separate your relationship with food into good and bad, which is part of diet culture, and it's not very helpful. And as someone, I've recently lost 2 stone through actually just kind of eating what I want, but just in measure. Whereas I spent many years with this narrative and rhetoric of, you have to eat this, you can't eat that. I've been good. If I spend all 2 weeks getting exercise, getting in shape, eating the right things, and then I come to Christmas and hate myself for eating stuff, that's not a healthy relationship. I used to do that quite a lot, and so did my mum. And thankfully, we both went through it together. What I'd say is it's just worth it. Go, if you want to go and indulge and do these things at these times, then go and do it. It's not the end of the world if you want to lose that weight again. It doesn't take long. For me, and this isn't a psychotherapy opinion, it's just mine as a person, but like when I'm dying on my deathbed, will I be like, oh, I'm glad I ate celery for the last 10 years of my life at Christmas? No, I'd be like, why
Uh-huh.
didn't I smash those mince pies? Why didn't I smash that bottle of beer? Because it's just more fun. But anyway, that's just my opinion. That's personal
Fair.
opinion.
Yeah, fair. Well, I was going to kind of naturally lead us into January as we go, but like it is linked with the whole, what happens in January is we have the overindulgence over the Christmas period, and then come January it's about the new year, new me, and then it's like all the diet plans and all the gym memberships are thrown at you through social media and whatever. I feel like for a lot of people there's this sort of mentality of indulge December, restrict January. So that's why there's like dry January as well. And like I
Yeah,
said,
good
people are
point.
like, the gym subscriptions tend to be at the highest rate is in January. So I
Yeah.
completely agree about balance. I think it's a mindset switch, but in terms of bringing it back to holiday anxiety, maybe that is actually something that
Yeah.
would
I
be
mean,
useful.
just don't fall for it. Don't be a sheep. And this is what I would say to clients. Any time of year you want to go through a change that you feel that would make you feel better, or there's something in your life you want to improve, I'd endorse that any time of year. Would I do it in January and February? No. January and February are the hardest months of the year, depression wise, anxiety wise. Why would you then restrict then? Some people it works, some people it doesn't. I've done it, and I'd love to see the stats on people who maintain doing these gym things. I
Well,
had
yeah, quite.
I had a friend who worked in a gym in the sales team, and he was like, "Oh, January's coming. Oh, yes, commission central. It's going to be brilliant." But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but what is that change? If you're going drastic, I'm going to go gym 5 times a week. I'm going to go on the FODMAP diet. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to intermittent fast. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do all that. It's just not going to happen.
You're
If you
setting
choose,
yourself up, aren't you, for failure?
yeah, yeah, and you'll rebel against yourself as soon as you fail. Whereas if you just choose one thing, like mine a few years ago was stopping smoking. I was like, right, but instead of going and stopping smoking, I was like, I'm going to stop smoking 20 cigarettes a day. So I was like, I'm going to try and smoke 3 a day. I don't smoke anymore. I haven't smoked for years, but like, it's that kind of being reasonable and compassionate with yourself. Because that's the one this time of year, lots of people are anxious because they're not compassionate with themselves. They are so harsh on themselves. And it doesn't work. You can't criticize and discipline yourself out of escaping a feeling that you don't want. Because if you look at it at a deeper level, you're actually doing it to feel better, and it's just like you're in a better mindset come January. Okay, you've put on a bit of weight because of whatever. If you hate yourself for that, that's the problem. Rather than being a pragmatist and compassionate and being like, right, okay, I've smashed the pies and the wine. Maybe let's not do that now, but I'll go for a brisk walk in the morning, and I'll do an activity or whatever if I want to. It doesn't
Yeah,
matter. You don't have to. It's if you want to, and
yeah.
talking to yourself like you talk to a friend is really important. But you never, if you could hear people's minds in January, it's so critical. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. You should be
Yeah.
doing that. And that's anxiety. So
And do you think that bleeds through from Christmas? Because again, this is something that you touched upon already. The pressure of it being perfect, because the Christmas period is getting less and less away from celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ to a money making thing for companies and brands, and so we're being constantly bombarded with these images of the perfect Christmas, holidays are coming. And so there was a word that I highlighted, toxic perfectionism. I hadn't come across that term before, toxic perfectionism, but I'd imagine the Christmas period is a fantastic breeding ground for it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It really is. I'd even remove the word toxic. Just perfectionism is bad. There's no such thing as a good perfectionism. It's perfectionism is just when people value themselves on output, not intentions. And the paradox of it is that what is perfect, it's usually something that is just out of achievable reach. It's also a safety behavior. People who are perfectionists actually fear criticism, and they fear being rejected. So whether that's been conditioned growing up through really bossy parents or school or being in an abusive relationship, people turn to perfectionism because it's a protective barrier towards being hurt or being on the end of criticism. And I see it as an anxious safety behavior. My advice to that is just if that applies to you, just be like, learn to laugh at your imperfect Christmas. And then that in itself becomes perfect Christmas. We always do. There's always a fallout at Christmas, or drink too much or whatever, so there's no such thing as a perfect Christmas. And if you want to be the family from the Kodak advert or the M&S advert or whatever, then come on, man.
The Hallmark movie.
Oh God, yeah, the Christmas 24 movies. So
Yeah.
she moved to the city but came back, and her hot childhood sweetheart is waiting with chiseled abs, just waiting for his love. Oh God, yes.
Stable boy.
The stable boy. Oh God, yeah.
Because of course they live on a ranch, Yeah. So I actually pulled some common examples of when anxiety can really be triggered or amplified. And I'd love to know if you've got, because I'm sure you will have, any golden nuggets on how we can kind of self-soothe or just kind of bring ourselves down when we're being confronted by these particular scenarios. Okay, going into a packed out pub or restaurant.
Okay. Before I answer these scenarios, it's really important to frame what kind of anxiety you're struggling with. Okay. So I separate anxiety into two. You could have conventional anxiety.
Okay.
Conventional anxiety is things like worrying about, what I look like, jobs, perfectionism, things like that. The kind of anxiety that everyone worries about, worried about money, finances, first dates, things like that. And judgment.
And that's called conventional.
I just call it. It's like it's an anxiety that no one's going to be shocked at if you told them. It's like, oh, right. I'm afraid what people think of me. Well, everyone can relate to that. So you got the first one, and the second one is inwards disordered anxiety, and this is where people who struggle with panic attacks, agoraphobia, health anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a lot of people. You're talking 1 in 3, 1 in 4 people now. Social anxiety, these kind of anxiety. So I'll answer it from both perspectives.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, maybe if one applies more to one than the other as well, I'll let you kind of take the thread and run with it. Walking into that very, when it's like packed out and there's a lot of noise and you kind of, the senses are hit when you just sort of walk in. Yeah, maybe looking for your friend or loved one, and it's just noise in that restaurant or pub.
Yeah, so that might, if you're quite sensitive to that thing, what will happen is your threat response might go off. So you feel suddenly anxious. What will happen is your peripheral vision will either open up or close down, and you might feel a bit lightheaded. Your heart might race, and you might be looking for the nearest exit or an excuse to leave. That feeling of threat and discomfort is actually temporary. So regardless of what type of anxiety you have in this situation, if you feel like you want to run or get away, that's literally the fight or flight response. It's the flight part of it, and that's temporary actually. So and this is what I say to people, like, if you do what non-anxious you would do, it will turn off. Now, I don't even self-soothe. I don't do techniques. I don't do anything. The magic rule in my therapy practice is do what non-anxious you would do, for many reasons, mostly because it teaches the brain that actually anxiety is not quite needed here. Yeah, there's loads of potential threats around because there's lots of people, but actually no one here's out to get me. So I'm going to show you, brain, that nothing's out to get me. And that discomfort will usually last about 10, maybe 20 minutes. And you're not going to feel that hungry, and your throat might feel a bit dry, and you might feel a bit detached and dissociated and irritable. But just stick through it, stick through it, and it will pass. And then give yourself a pat on the back. I used to hate going into busy places and stuff. Now I like going to music gigs and things and standing in the middle because it's fun.
Oh, wow. And they can be packed. So would you sort of apply that to shopping centres as well? Like when you have to panic buy because you've forgotten someone, or you're like me where you leave it to the last minute because you can't even face being organised and buying before. I do it every year and I go, why am I doing this to myself? Why? I miss the Amazon cut-off. I'm literally that last minute and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I have done this in the past, going into busy shopping centres, and my personal opinion is it's just not nice, and I just do it whilst anxious. You know, like it isn't nice. There's people everywhere. It's rammed. You know, it's overwhelming. But just do it. You're all right. You're okay. I know it's not groundbreaking advice, but just do it. You know, because you will become more acclimatized and you will habituate to the situation the more you're there. But I never like going into a busy shopping center. I mean, who does?
Yeah.
I don't know. If there's anyone listening now, fair play to you if you like it, because I really don't. But my advice is to say, you know, anxiety can't hurt you. You know, it's not going to make you collapse or lose control unless you have kind of any comorbid conditions. It's just discomfort, and it will pass the more you do the opposite of what it wants you to do.
And then final one that I'm going to lump all in the same kind of category: packed trains, backed up motorways, delayed flights, travel anxiety, basically. Do we just again have to like suck it up and get on with it?
Whoa, I never said suck it up.
That was my interpretation.
Pull your sleeves up and get on with it. No, compassionately go through
Sorry.
it. Yeah.
Right.
With compassion. No, just get on with it. No, like compassion. Like, I know I'm going to be scared.
It's hard to be compassionate, Josh, when you're like elbowing to try and get on a train because it's like, oh, please don't make me wait another hour.
By all means, elbow everyone else, but be compassionate to yourself. And that's really
okay.
Transport anxiety. It's really interesting. When I'm on my podcast, my most listened to podcast is driving anxiety. I was like, what? Of all the wonderful information here, driving anxiety is the most. This is where I will draw upon the two types of anxiety. Some people just don't like it because they feel overwhelmed. You know, I feel irritable. I feel claustrophobic here. And a lot of people don't like it because they're quite agoraphobic. And agoraphobic is when I don't like being too far away from my safe space. So you know you're agoraphobic if you, in extreme cases, don't leave the house, but agoraphobia can present as I only go to work and house, I only drive on certain roads, I don't get on trains because I can't get off, I don't get on buses because I'm not in control and I can't get off. If you're that, then, you know, challenge that with exposure therapy. And it's always good to do that with a good CBT therapist. I was so agoraphobic once upon a time, I couldn't even leave my bedroom. And it was a very scary, horrible time, but it's highly treatable and you can get to a good place with it. So yeah, if you're that, you know, I would like treat it as an exposure, but I'm going to expose myself to not rudely, don't be exposing your body parts to people, but like expose myself to the anxiety and be like, all right, okay, I'm actually exposing myself to the anxiety. And that takes when I realize that my anxiety is separate from me, it's just a part of my brain that goes off because it thinks I'm under threat. And 99% of the time it's wrong. I'm like, all right, okay, well, I'll just, do it anyway. I'll go and do it anyway. And yeah, that the brain can rewire itself pretty quickly the more you're willing to be anxious doing things. And I had to do that on trains, cars. I've not done it on a plane yet, but I will get on a plane soon and do that. In January, actually, I've booked something to do that. So yeah. But in general, yeah. And then on the other side is just, if you're just overwhelmed, it's okay. You can use your techniques if you're struggle with that conventional kind of anxiety, stress-induced anxiety. So, you can do some deep breathing. You can self-soothe if you'd like to. These are all helpful things. They're not mandatory. But if it helps you because you're stressed, then yeah, go for it.
Maybe as well, like planning ahead a little bit, or not even planning ahead, but thinking ahead to for example, we know Christmas Eve is going to be a really busy travel day, right? Versus if you're driving on Christmas Day, maybe the roads are going to be quieter. So you could maybe give yourself a little bit of a break in that way as well.
Yeah, planning and stuff like that, that's fine. Yeah, particularly if if it's avoidable stress, you can. If you're avoiding things because you're afraid to experience anxiety, then no, don't go for it. My clients.
Okay.
Oh no, you don't avoid anxiety. No. You avoid stress. Don't avoid anxiety. No. We don't do that.
Okay, so this anticipation for family gatherings that we can't get out of. In our heads, are we building it up too much, do you think?
Depends on your family. Like, it's
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it? Like, I had an ex-girlfriend like years ago who, went to a family. She's got a racist uncle. I'm like, this is just intolerable. And I said it is intolerable, and I just don't want to sit and listen to that. And it was really horrible, and it's not me building up in my head. But at the same time, you could be sensitized to stuff. Families, particularly if you don't get on with your family, you can be very sensitive to each other's reactions.
Yeah.
If you're a people pleaser and you like to placate people, then the likelihood is that it may have come from your family, and you're very sensitive to the reactions and the comments and opinions of mommy and daddy or whoever you grew up with. Family's a weird one, isn't it? Because you all go off in your separate ways, separate opinions, but it's unconditional. So people feel safer in a family unit to say more controversial things because you can't change family. And that can often lead to conflict, and it's really quite annoying. For me, though, you don't have to. I say this and I say this to my clients in here, if you really hate it, if you really just hate your family and they don't provide anything for you, or if they're cruel or not nice, then just don't go. I wouldn't. Family members I don't see because they're just not nice. They don't really do anything for me. They're just not nice. And I just don't want to, time's precious, Whereas to some
Yeah.
people, I'll go, I'll fly around the world for to see, if they needed me. So, you get to choose that. I don't believe the blood is thicker than water nonsense. I think it's crap. You just,
Really?
that's nonsense. Why would I why would I give all of my emotional resources to someone who's selfish, who never gives you anything back, when I could give that to a friend who's always there for you at the end of it? Why would you waste your time? So yeah, anyway, that's my opinion.
See, yeah, sometimes it's not as easy as that though, because maybe it's like the spouse of a sibling, or, what if it's like you don't want to let down everybody else, but there might just be one or two people that really trigger you. Maybe they're aggressive drunks or judgmental people, or, they just like to moan and they make a beeline for you. You don't want to let down, say, the sibling, the parent, the grandparent, but you're never going to have fun,
True, and if you're doing it for someone else out of love, that's great, and that's great. But at the same time, if someone's making a beeline for you, that's not you letting them down. That's their family member letting them down. And you don't have to endure silliness. Don't get me wrong. Like, people have disagreements, stuff like that. But if someone's being irrational and out of order, you don't have to tolerate that. I wouldn't, and my partner wouldn't, and just you don't need to do that. Obviously, you get the right measure if you're in a relationship, or there's always compromise, and we always
Yeah.
endure situations that we don't want to, and that's okay, and that's because you do it out of love. But if someone's taking it too far and triggering you and being not nice, then I'd just be like, no, I'm not going, and let everyone have a moan, because guess what? They're gonna moan anyway. It doesn't. It just,
Fair. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, well, what about if this is for the group that I'd imagine this is who you treat? So this is people with
Disorders.
yes. What about fear of like ruining the day, not being happy enough, not being, Christmassy enough, letting other people down, and not wanting to bring other people down? What do we do there?
If you're someone who struggles with panic attacks and really high anxiety, then your appetite isn't going to be great. It's not your fault. If you're being perfectionist with an anxiety disorder, you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot. You're not going to be great. No one's 100% on Christmas Day. Don't magnify on your imperfections and judge yourself on your intentions. I'm doing this despite a crippling anxiety disorder. I'm doing this despite a really horrible eating disorder. I'm doing this with PTSD. I'm doing this, and I might have an anxiety attack, but I'm choosing to do it anyway. Now, if you're with a understanding family, or at least a family that try to understand, try is the important word here. They're not going to fully get it, but if they, if they try to get it and try to empathize, then that's fine. But if you're around a family who don't want to empathize, You know, if they have zero empathy, zero compassion, they criticize you for being anxious and panicky on Christmas Day, I just walk out. Why would you? You know, you're not spoiling anything. Actually, their lack of compassion is spoiling the day, because Christmas is a time of love and compassion, and you come together. And if they can't even take 4 seconds out to kind of try to understand your emotional struggles, then, you know, that's not you spoiling it, I'm afraid. You know, don't get me wrong. Ideally, wouldn't it be great? Woke up Christmas morning like Scrooge, but like, well, hey, you boy, what day is it? And you go around and, you know, you dance around Christmas turkey, singing Old Lang Syne, whatever. That's great. It could happen, and that's great, but it might not either, and it's not your fault. You know, just try, judge yourself on intentions.
What about when it taps into your self-esteem? So how you look, how you feel, how you conduct yourself. And then thinking the next day, did I behave okay? Did I say the right thing? Oh, did I offend that person?
You're talking about social anxiety, and the people who sit and ruminate. And if this is you listening, you know, if you ruminate about offending people, or if you hyperanalyze what the conversations you've had, or you preempt conversations you've had that you're gonna have, and you rehearse conversations and you do stuff like that, that's usually because that's a safety mechanism. It's usually because there's someone that's in or been in your life 9 times out of 10, not all the time, 9 times out of 10, who's usually hypercritical, and their opinion means a lot to you, particularly as a kid where your brain's more impressionable and the imprint can last. That placation, that people pleasing, becomes a safety behavior. And actually, when you're going over conversations, oh, did I do that? That's actually an anxious compulsion, which doesn't help things. In my practice, when we do that, I purposely, you know, go be controversial. You know, walk in and say something controversial, not offensive, but controversial. And doing the opposite, we do things called shame attacks from REBT therapy and stuff like that to challenge this. But you've got to understand, actually, no, this is my threat response going off here because I want to please people. I mean, there's a theory where our ancestors had when you know, you go around in tribes in the wilderness, and if you're banished from the tribe, you know, you're not going to survive. And so we've got to make sure everyone's happy with us so we don't get banished from the tribe. You know, that's a theory. But in general, from my experience, when people do that, it's usually because they've been around very judgmental, powerful, opinionated authority figures. When you learn that actually their opinion has the same weight as yours, and just because you've grown up and they've been that figure, doesn't mean they're right, and doesn't mean they can sound as convincing as they want, but it becomes your problem when their judgment and their opinion of you is the be all and end all. You've got to see them as your equal, and that's your self-esteem. That's your self-esteem right there.
Yeah. So do you think sometimes we're triggered and it's like we need to think, is this anxiety from now or from the past? Like maybe it's something that, if they're a caregiver, is what they're saying actually that bad, or is it more of a trigger to something they've said in the past that's really affected me?
That's a great responsive thought to have, actually. Yeah, I'd have to say that, like, just quickly be like, is this something happening now, or is this something I'm holding on to from the past? Because the threat response will do both. So that's really good. It'd be like, and I'd invite you to do that if anyone's doing it. If you're at the dinner table and someone's saying you feel triggered, or you feel your threat response engaging, but that's called metacognitive awareness. So you're like, hold on, is this me, or is this something cropping up?
Is this inner child?
Yeah, well, you hear all the time. I work with people all the time, people who are terrified of bosses that haven't done anything wrong, just because they remind them of, say, their dad, you know, or their mum, you know, and mum and dad was gobby and opinionated growing up because their mum and dad were gobby and opinionated, and so on and so forth. And it gets passed on, and then you start to see it in the other elements of your life. Yeah, no, I just be like, yeah, that's a really good question. Is this, I mean, really good solution. First thing is to go, is this actually happening now? Am I being affronted now? Is this offensive now? Or is it just something that perhaps triggering from the past? I love metacognitive awareness. It's not a good conversation on a first date, but, you know, metacognitive awareness is great.
Save it for the second.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of romance, lots of people get engaged over Christmas, and then you've got social media, and it's like people are all loved up, or it's like, look at the sparkly hand.
Oh God.
Um, and if we are triggered by that stuff, I know, should we just avoid? What shall we do there?
If you're triggered by someone getting married on Christmas, come on, yeah, have a word with yourself. Oh
It's all
God.
that kind of.
Well, it depends what what you find interesting and stuff. Personally, I find that quite cliche. Just
Yeah.
being, it's just me being miserable. Sorry, it's just good. Like, I'm happy for people to do that. Be happy for people that are doing that. If they want to share that
Yeah.
with you, it's great. It's no
Yeah.
impact on you. If you're seeing other people's achievements and you turning it into a baton to beat yourself with, that's your problem. And you've got to challenge that. What's wrong with two people getting married? If your first thought is these two people are getting married, well, I'm not got a partner, well, I haven't got a kid, well, I haven't got a promotion. That's very self-centered, isn't it? It's like you're using someone's emotional joy to beat yourself up with.
Yes, kind of. But there was a psychiatrist that said recently, an Italian one, because I'm in Italy at the moment, and I thought this comment was quite interesting. He said, Christmas is about celebrating the lack. So people reflect on what they don't have in their lives and it makes them crazy. So this is where I think I'm getting at with the this kind of air quote magical time of year where there's the engagement announcements. I'm using that as just like one example, but the floodgates are open on social media, aren't they? For like, look how dazzling my Christmas time is, which can make people feel like crap.
And as a therapist, I'd be like, well, why does that make you feel like crap? What is it about two people separate from you who are getting married? Why does that make you feel like crap? For
Yeah.
me, if I'm being honest, I'd have two responses. I'd have, well done, my friends are getting married, and I'm really happy for them. It's great. If that's what they want, that's a nice diamond ring. I'd rather spend it on holiday, but fair enough. And my second response would be, how ridiculously cliche and nauseating, and that's what it would be. It would
Yeah.
be a mix. I'd be mostly happy, but I'd have a critical voice in my
Yeah.
head saying, "Well, whatever."
But
But
some people who may be a bit vulnerable if they're single or if they're in a relationship where the partner's, not putting a ring on it and that's something they want, like there's those kind of factors where it might just trigger you.
well, if that's triggering you, like this is where I'd look at it. There's something called in humanistic therapy, there's something called conditions of worth, a term made by Carl Rogers, and as we grow up, we introject beliefs, what we feel is important. Even before we're born. Look at baby showers. Blue for boy, pink for girl. You're conditioned before you're even born. And you're told, women are conditioned from the age of 1 or 2. They're given dollies, prams, all these things, whereas boys are given all these kind of vocational toys like tractors and tools and cars and things like that. And there's all these conditions. And then you've got other powerful emotional introjections that are your conditions, like boys don't cry, don't cry, be strong, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but that's something that loads of people still use.
Yeah.
Things like, you got to look good for your holiday. You learn that. Who the hell said that that's a
Yeah.
thing?
That's such a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like who cares? Those kind of things. Our esteem is an amalgamation of all these introjections, and they lead to something called conditions of worth. So if you grow up, you've been conditioned to think that being married and having a kid is part of self-esteem, but it isn't. I've spoken to, in fact, some of the happiest people I know in my personal life are women in their 50s who are unmarried, who don't have children. And it's fascinating because they've let go of that. Now, don't get me wrong, if you want children because you want children, have children, regardless of your gender, if you want to go and do that, and that's fine. But for me, are you doing it for you, or are you doing it because you're trying to fill a void to make you feel like you're something? And that's the difference.
And fit into societal expectations.
Absolutely. But then that's when you
Yeah.
get, if you look at when people have children to as a tick box, then often, sometimes, but sometimes, if you have the children for the wrong reasons, then it's those children that will look up and see that, and they will then introject those lessons from their parents. I certainly did as well. Don't get me wrong, I love my mum and dad, and they're wonderful people. You always introject from your parents' ideals. I was like, go play football, drive cars, do all that stuff. And some of them I enjoy. I like playing football, stuff like that, but I'm not really into the vocational stuff. I'm a therapist. I sit on my ass all day and listen to people. It's great. But in general, yeah, like question those conditions of worth, because there is no rule book. I'd question, where did you even learn that from? If you've got the cliche pushy parents like, you must get A stars and everything. Well, it's not even A stars anymore. Show my age, is it? It's like, no, you must get nines in everything. Well, why? I was lucky. My mum was like, as long as you try your best, I don't care. And she'll look and be like, all right, I actually saw you try your best in that. And even though you only got a B in English, you tried your best. I love that. That really helped me.
Only got a B. A B's good.
Oh no, you should see the stuff I hear. You only got, why didn't you get an A star? You're messing about, right? You're not going out. You must do this. It's like, parents living vicariously through their children to accommodate and compensate for their own failures. Yeah.
Wow. I've got to talk about booze real quick, I feel, because like if you're not a big boozer, food is one thing, but then when drink is sort of pushed on you, oh, go on, one won't kill you, you're boring. Maybe this is a bit more triggering for me because I'm not a big well, not anymore anyway, reformer party girl, but I was on holiday recently with my mum and she wanted someone to drink with her. And I said, I don't feel like drinking tonight. And she actually rolled her eyes. Now I'm a fully grown person that can make my own decisions. But it was like, ouch, because I'm boring. So in terms of anxiety around alcohol, and if you're a former alcoholic, if you're in the program, this must be a really anxious time as well because you're surrounded by it, aren't you, and parties. And so I feel like alcohol and anxiety around Christmas is a tricky one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that small anecdote is quite, it's quite a cultural staple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Remember, alcohol consumption does not equate to fun. People who will pressure you into drinking is to do it to appease their own feelings of guilt, because I like beer, I like wine, but never pressure anyone into doing it because I'm literally ingesting poison. Yeah, that's what it is. Alcohol is a poison, delicious poison, but it's a poison. So if you don't want to do it, and if you've got an unhealthy relationship with it, or you just choose not to, it's not your problem if people can't respect your boundaries. It's theirs.
Right.
And credit to you, and it is their problem. I know plenty of people that will support that decision. They'd be like, well done for not drinking. I had to readdress my relationship with alcohol several years ago. Was an alcoholic, but I was, had a very unhealthy relationship with it. I'm in a lot better place now. But yeah, just respecting people's choices and it's not being judgmental because they're not doing what you want to do,
And also, for me as well, and using myself, going into family gatherings where there are a couple of people that do not have the best relationship with alcohol and it doesn't bring out the, shall we say, the best in them. So for me, especially around Christmas time, I can feel very anxious going to a family buffet or party or whatever because there might be one or two people where I'm like, oh God, they're drinking. Oh God, they're drinking. So I'm kind of on edge waiting for them to maybe get a bit nasty or angry or weepy or, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if that happens all the time for these certain people, then it's absolutely fine to just, stay away from them, leave early, make sure you say hello to them before they start drinking, if you want to, if you know that it's, what I'd ask is this a fear that I have that's irrational? What's the likelihood of this person doing this? Is it because they did it once 10 years ago and I don't want it to happen again and it's something that I'm still holding on to? Or are they just renowned for being a bit of a knob when they drink?
Yeah, it's the latter in my case.
And in that case, just stay away from them and leave. I wouldn't do it,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't expect people to do it. You don't have to sit around and endure someone being abhorrent, and you shouldn't have to. And that's not Christmas, is it? And it's
Yeah.
it's their responsibility. If they cannot be responsible for their alcohol consumption, their behavior, why should you have to sit and endure it?
I might have to send this pod to the family members. And so, as we're getting into like New Year's Eve and then January, December is so fast, and then January just feels very slow. And again, I feel like this can make us feel quite anxious. And also, we've got the guilt and the shame and the worry over the lack of finances, say, for how much we're spending. So how do we be kind to ourselves over January when the weather's miserable, we're skin, and it's just a notorious month of the year, isn't it, for just not feeling our best?
Yeah, and just go easy on yourself. It is a miserable month. I don't really like January. Go easy on yourself. Don't try to go 1,000 miles an hour into some radical metamorphosis. And do things you enjoy. Like January and February are miserable months. They're really miserable. We said it before. They're miserable months. So the best antidote to that is to do things that you enjoy. For me, I like sitting in, watching movies, doing these things. It's like hibernating, basically. These are hibernating months for me. Go to work, do those things.
Yeah. I think maybe that's why, going back to what we were saying about the restriction thing, and that's when people stop drinking and restrict their food intake to lose the pounds, and then it's already, like you said, a miserable month, and then that's why I think we can make ourselves more miserable.
Yeah, it's like a self-punishment for having a nice
Yeah.
December. But again, where do you learn that from? Who says you've got to punish yourself in January? Maybe marketers do. Maybe
Yeah.
all those things. So yeah. Oh, I love January. I love going out to restaurants in January because everything's cheap. You get like 2-for-1 deals and all that stuff. I love doing it in a nice, quiet restaurant. And yeah, okay. I'm still being reasonable. It's okay. Whereas people take things to extremes. Stop taking things to
Yeah.
extremes, one or the other, because I'm more likely to get to a place where I want to go because I do things in moderation and with compassion than someone who, feels awful, beats themselves up for a bit of friendly gluttony at December and then full on self-restriction in January and all that stuff. I'm like, for me, that's not really whatever suits you, but I'd always ask, who are you doing this for? Is this a friendly thing to be doing for me right now? I love that question. Is this a friendly thing to be doing for me right now? Actually, no. I'm just baiting myself in the gym, baiting myself when I'm out. I'm restricting my food intake. I'm just stood in the mirror criticizing myself. I'm on the scales 5 times a day. This isn't a friendly thing to be doing for me, is it? I
Nope.
wouldn't be marching my friend around doing this. I wouldn't be marching my kid around doing this. So why am I doing it to myself? And that's what you gotta look out for.
Good point. Okay, last question. I ask every guest to set us some homework based on the theme of the episode. So in this case, Josh, what is a simple, actionable thing that we can do when it comes to managing our anxiety around the holidays that will help us on our quest to building a happier life?
Yeah, my homework is, how many things can you be okay with doing imperfectly today? Your homework is to, how many things can you do imperfect today, but be okay with it. It's really it's a headbender. I like it. I love it doing it. What, you want me to purposely fail or do things not perfectly? Yeah, that's part one. And how many of those were you all right with? They're like, well, it's my homework, so kind of it's a paradox. So yeah, great, do that. How many things can you do imperfectly? You know,
Okay.
I don't mean like lob the Christmas turkey out the window. That's what that's at home, but like just do these things and stop placating. And also, if you're a people pleaser, because that's been a big theme of the episode, people pleasing around Christmas, just go and say something controversial. Say your opinion. You know, who's entertaining me around this table as opposed to, did I say the right thing? No, who's entertaining me? No one. Everyone's boring. I can't wait to go through there and watch Toy Story 3. There we go. That's what I want to do.
Good film reference. Thanks, Josh. Amazing stuff, as always.
Thank you, Gabby.
So for more on you, schoolofanxiety.com is the website. Yeah. Instagram is anxietyjosh. Your podcast is The Panic Pod.
Yeah.
We'll wrap there. Nice one, Josh. Really appreciate it.
Nice one. Catch you soon, Gabby.
You know what I love about Josh? He's a really good crack. Like, even if we're talking about some pretty serious topics, he always manages to bring a bit of humour and light relief woven into, I think you'll agree, some really great advice. So thank you to Joshua Fletcher, and thank you to you guys for making it through to the end of our final episode of 2022 of the Happier Life Project with me, Gabby Sanderson. And if you enjoyed and found this episode really helpful with Josh, we did actually have a conversation in season 1 of the podcast. He was episode 3, Unraveling Anxiety. Now, this was before we rebranded into the Happier Life Project. So you have to search for the podcast, My Possible Self. And like I said, it's episode 3, Unraveling Anxiety with Joshua Fletcher. Now, if you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app that will signpost you to the correct information for immediate expert advice. Those of you who are listening on one of the podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is free to download, so you don't need to worry about it costing you anything. If you found this episode helpful, we'd love it if you would subscribe to the pod and leave us a review. And to find and follow us on social media, we are at My Possible Self, and I've been at Radio Gabby. So please do take care. Enjoy this Christmas period if you can, and I'll see you in 2023. We'll be back on January 3rd. Bye for now.